Oh, you don't live here. This is residents only.
I do live here. I'm wearing a wristband.
Those can be faked. Prove it.
Step back. Show ID. You don't belong here without proof.
The gate clicked open with a sound that felt harmless. Plastic against metal. A quick beep. One green light. Darius tapped his key fob to the reader like he'd done 100 times, barely thinking about it. And then, for a second, everything in the air changed. Because the moment the latch released, a woman on the far side of the pool deck stopped walking. Not slowly, not casually, like a switch flipped. Darius Cole didn't notice at first. He was 16, all long limbs and summer confidence. The kind of kid who'd grown into his height before he'd grown into the way people sometimes look at you when you don't fit their picture of a place. He had a towel draped over one shoulder, flip-flops slapping against the concrete as he pushed the gate wider and held it for the two friends behind him. The afternoon sun hammered down on the surface of the water, turning the pool into a sheet of trembling light. The air smelled like chlorine and sunscreen. Somewhere, a little kid shrieked with joy as he cannonballed into the shallow end. It was supposed to be the easiest kind of day. Then the woman's voice cut through the heat. "Hey!" Darius turned. She was standing near the posted rules sign, one hand on her hip, the other holding a phone like it had been waiting for this moment. Late 40s, neat ponytail, sunglasses perched on top of her head like a crown. Her swimsuit wasn't a swimsuit, not really, more like a curated outfit for a place she considered hers. She didn't say hello, she didn't ask a question, she delivered a conclusion. "You don't live here," she said. The words landed softly, but the meaning didn't. Darius blinked once. "What?" "I said you don't live here," she repeated, louder, like volume could turn her assumption into fact. "This is residents only. You can't just walk in." Darius felt his shoulders tighten. He'd heard versions of this before, not always with these exact words. Sometimes it was, "Can I help you?" said with a smile that wasn't a smile. Sometimes it was, "Who are you here to see?" Sometimes it was security drifting close in a store. But this was blunt. "I do live here," he said. "Building 14, Unit 14C. My mom's inside the complex. I'm just going to swim." The woman's mouth tightened. "No," she said, as if she could vote him out with one syllable. "I know the kids who live here." Darius looked around. Other adults had started paying attention. The splashing didn't stop, but it softened, like the pool itself was listening. His friend Mateo shifted behind him. "D, you got your wristband?" Mateo whispered. Darius lifted his arm. There it was, the thin blue plastic band that came with being a resident. The HOA had started doing that after an incident last summer. Never mind that the incident, according to half the neighborhood, was mostly a rumor about outsiders. "I'm wearing it," Darius said. The woman didn't look. She didn't want to see evidence. She wanted control. "Those can be faked," she snapped. "Show me your key fob. Show me your ID. Prove it." Darius lifted the black fob on his keyring for half a second. Paige didn't even glance at it. Darius stared at her. "Prove what?" "That you belong here," she said. And right there, right in the middle of a sunny, normal, suburban afternoon, an ordinary teen realized he was being put on trial at a swimming pool. This is the story of how a rookie police officer took that trial and turned it into a public humiliation. How a homeowners association tried to protect itself instead of the kid it was supposed to serve. And how, in the end, a gated community that bragged about safety had to pay out $600,000 when the evidence showed what that word had really meant. Not safety, ownership. Before we go deeper, quick question. Where are you watching from? Drop your city, state, or country in the comments. Because the wild part about stories like this is how familiar they feel, no matter where you live. And if you care about what happens when everyday life collides with power, bias, and a badge, hit like and subscribe. It tells the algorithm these stories matter, and it helps more people see what gets brushed off as no big deal. Now back to the pool gate, because that woman's phone wasn't just in her hand. It was already dialing. The gated community was called Hawthorne Cove. If you looked at it on a map, it was just another cluster of tan buildings and curved streets on the edge of a growing suburb. But to the people who lived there, it was a promise that the outside world, with its noise, its chaos, its uncertainty, would stop at the guard kiosk. The HOA brochure talked about peaceful living. The signs at the entrance said private property. The newsletters used words like standards and community character. And the pool was the jewel. It had a code gate, a set of cameras pointed at the entrance. Rules posted in bold letters. A schedule, an entire section in the HOA budget. On paper, it was all about order. In practice, it was about who got to relax. Darius had lived in Hawthorne Cove for 2 years. His mother, Tasha Cole, moved them there after a divorce that left her with more relief than money. She worked as a nurse manager at a regional hospital, the kind of job that meant long shifts and constant pressure, and a phone that never stopped buzzing. Hawthorne Cove was supposed to be a restart, a place with sidewalks, a place where Darius could ride his bike without crossing a 4-lane road, a place where neighbors waved. At first, it almost worked. Then little things started happening. A neighbor asking Tasha if she was house-sitting. Someone accidentally calling her the cleaning lady in the clubhouse. A woman at the mailbox asking if Darius was visiting cousins. Small enough to deny, sharp enough to sting. Tasha learned how to smile through it. Darius learned something else. He learned how to keep his voice calm, how to keep his hands visible, how to avoid being labeled. Because he'd already seen the videos, he'd seen how a normal moment could turn into a headline. He just didn't think it would happen at a pool. The woman who confronted him that day was named Paige Halstead. Darius didn't know that yet. He only knew her energy, the rigid certainty, the way her gaze flicked to his friends, and then settled on him like he was the problem that needed to be solved. "Ma'am," Darius said, trying to keep it respectful, "I'm not doing anything. I live here." Paige lifted her phone. "I'm calling the police," she said. Mateo stepped forward. "He's literally wearing the wristband," he said. Paige's eyes snapped to Mateo, then away. "You," she said, pointing at him, "need to stay out of this." Then she spoke into her phone, loud enough for half the pool to hear. "Yes, hi. There are some teens here and I don't think they live in the community. They got into the pool area. They're being argumentative." Argumentative. Darius felt his stomach drop. He hadn't raised his voice. He hadn't insulted her. He had simply said the truth. But sometimes the truth isn't what matters. Sometimes the only thing that matters is the story someone decides to tell. A few feet away, a man with a shaved head and a whistle on a lanyard, one of the HOA's seasonal pool monitors, walked over. He looked uncomfortable, not because he didn't know what to do, because he knew exactly what it looked like. "What's going on?" he asked. Paige didn't answer him. "Keep them here," she said, like she was issuing a command. The pool monitor glanced at Darius's wristband. He glanced at the kids playing. He glanced at Paige. "Ma'am," he said carefully, "they have the resident bands." Paige's face tightened. "Those are not hard to get," she said. "I want an officer here." Darius felt heat rise in his face. He looked around and saw phones coming out. Not dramatically, not for entertainment, for proof, because people had learned the hard way that memory isn't enough. The police cruiser arrived in under 8 minutes. 8 minutes is nothing, but it's long enough for a crowd to gather, long enough for a rumor to form, long enough for a teenager to start wondering if he's about to be handcuffed in front of a pool full of strangers. The officer who stepped out looked young, early 20s, maybe 23. Fresh haircut, clean uniform, that stiff posture rookies get when they're still trying to fill the role. His name was Officer Tyler Brann. The small red indicator on his body camera was already lit. a name that would become important later. At that moment, he was just a badge walking toward a problem someone else had described. Paige marched up to him immediately. "Officer," she said. "Thank God, they don't live here. They forced their way in. I told them to leave and they refused." Darius opened his mouth. The officer held up a hand. "Hold on," he said, eyes fixed on Darius. "Let's start with you." He didn't ask Paige for her name. He didn't ask her what she saw. He didn't ask the pool monitor. He locked onto the teen. "Do you live here?" he asked. "Yes," Darius said. "What's your address?" Darius answered. The officer's eyebrows lifted. "Show me something that proves it," he said. Darius pointed to his wristband. The officer barely glanced. "I mean, actual proof," he said. Mateo shifted. "His mum lives here," he said. "You can call her." Officer Brand's gaze snapped to Mateo. "I'm not talking to you," he said. Then he turned back to Darius. "ID," he said. Darius hesitated. He had a school ID, not a driver's license yet. He was 16. "I don't have a driver's license," he said. The officer's jaw tightened. "Then you're telling me you can't identify yourself," he said, and suddenly it sounded like an accusation. Darius felt a cold clarity settle in. This wasn't a conversation, it was an interrogation. He reached into his backpack slowly and pulled out his student ID. Officer Brand looked at it like it was an insult. "This doesn't prove you live here," he said. "It proves who I am," Darius replied. Paige scoffed loudly. "Exactly," she said. "Anyone can have a school ID." Officer Brand took a step closer to Darius. "Listen," he said, voice dropping into that tone that's meant to sound like authority and ends up sounding like a threat. "If you don't live here, you're trespassing. That's a crime." "I do live here," Darius said, and his voice cracked just slightly, not from fear, but from disbelief. The officer didn't soften. "Then prove it," he said. "Right now." Darius's hands curled into fists at his sides. He forced them open. Can you check the resident list?" he asked. "The HOA has records." Officer Brand looked over his shoulder toward the pool monitor. "You have records?" he asked. The monitor nodded. "I can log into the system," he said, "but it's slow on my phone." Paige rolled her eyes. "He's stalling," she said, and Officer Brand, rookie, eager, already primed by Paige's narrative, made a decision. He turned back to Darius. "Stand up," he said. Darius was already standing. "Stand over there," the officer corrected, pointing to an empty patch of concrete near the gate. And just like that, Darius was being positioned, separated, displayed, like a suspect. Tasha Cole was in the hospital break room when her phone buzzed. She almost ignored it. Her shift had been brutal. Staffing was thin, patients were angry. Everything felt urgent. Then she saw the voicemail transcription. "Ma'am, this is Officer Brand with..." Her stomach dropped. She called back immediately. The officer answered. "Is this Tasha Cole?" "Yes," she said. "What's going on?" "Your son is at the community pool," he said. "We have a situation." "What kind of situation?" "We have reason to believe he may not be authorized to be there," the officer said. Tasha's grip tightened around her phone. "He lives there," she said. "I live there. What are you talking about?" "Ma'am," the officer replied, and his tone shifted into something almost rehearsed. "I need you to come down and verify residency." Verify, as if her son was a package that needed a signature. Tasha didn't argue. She didn't have the luxury. She told her supervisor she had a family emergency. And she drove home like the road was on fire. Back at the pool, the crowd had grown. A couple of teenagers whispered to each other. Two moms sat up straighter on their lounge chairs. Someone murmured, "Did he sneak in?" Someone else said, "No, I think he lives here." The debate had started. About his belonging. About his legitimacy. About whether his presence was a problem. Darius stood where the officer told him to stand, staring at the gate like it was a line he wasn't allowed to cross. Officer Brand spoke into his radio. "Dispatch, can you run the name Darius Cole?" Darius's name traveled through the air like a charge. Then the officer looked at him again. "Do you have anything with your address?" he asked. Darius shook his head. "I'm 16, he said. "I don't have bills." A laugh bubbled in the crowd, small, nervous. Officer Brand didn't laugh. He looked for a split second, embarrassed. Then he covered it with anger. "Don't get smart with me," he said. Darius swallowed. "I'm not," he said. "I'm just saying, what do you want me to show you?" Paige crossed her arms. "He can't show anything because he doesn't live here," she said. Officer Brand nodded slightly, like he was accepting her conclusion. That nod, small, almost invisible, would later matter, because it showed where his mind was. Not open, not curious, already decided. About 20 minutes later, when Tasha arrived, she saw the cruiser first. Then she saw the crowd. Then she saw her son standing near the gate, with his shoulders tight and his jaw clenched. Her heart didn't just break, it hardened, because she recognized the posture. She'd seen it in her own brother when he was stopped in high school. She'd seen it in patients' families who'd lived their whole lives being told they needed to prove their right to exist in a space. She walked through the gate fast, not running, but with purpose. Officer Brand stepped toward her. "Ma'am," he said. "I'm his mother," she replied. Paige stepped forward too, almost eager. "Finally," she said. "You need to control your son. He's trespassing." Tasha's eyes locked on Paige. "Who are you?" she asked. Paige bristled. "I'm a resident," she snapped. "And I know everyone here. I've never seen him." Tasha didn't blink. "Then you haven't been paying attention," she said. Officer Brand lifted his hand. "Ma'am, can you verify your address?" he asked. Tasha reached into her purse and pulled out her wallet. She handed over her driver's license. Brand's eyes flicked to the last name, then back to the student ID he'd been holding, like he was searching for a mismatch to justify the stop. The officer stared at it. Same community address, same complex. He looked at Darius, then back at the license. For a second, the simplest thing in the world was right in front of him. He could have said, "I'm sorry." He could have said, "We got a call. We had to check. Thank you." He could have ended it. Instead, he made the mistake that turned a humiliating moment into a lawsuit. He looked at Tasha and said, "How do I know this is really your son?" The air went still. Darius's eyes widened. Tasha felt something sharp move through her chest. "What?" she said. Paige made a small sound, almost like satisfaction. Officer Brand kept going. "I'm asking because—" he started. "Because what? Because he was a different shade than her? Because his hair was different? Because in his mind, a black family didn't fit into the picture of Hawthorne Cove?" Tasha stepped closer. "He is my son," she said, voice low and controlled. "And he lives here, and you have just publicly treated him like a criminal in front of this entire pool." Officer Brand's ears reddened. "Ma'am, I'm just doing my job," he said. "No," Tasha said. "You're doing it wrong. At this point, let me ask you something. If you were standing there, if you were a teenager being challenged in a place you pay dues for through your family, would you keep your cool, or would you snap? Tell me in the comments what you would have done." Because Darius did something most adults struggle to do. He stayed composed. He didn't scream, he didn't curse, he didn't give them the reaction that would justify the label they were trying to pin on him. He just said the truth. Again, "I live here," he said. And the crowd heard it, and the cameras recorded it, and the officer heard it. But the officer still didn't like the feeling of being wrong, so he looked for a way to regain control. "All right," Officer Brand said, voice stiff. "Everyone needs to clear the area while we figure this out." "Clear the area?" Tasha repeated. "Yes," he said. "This is an investigation. Investigation over a kid at a pool." The pool monitor finally stepped in. "Officer," he said, holding out his phone. "I'm logged in. He's on the resident list. Unit 14C, Darius Cole." He turned the screen. There it was. Clear. Undeniable. Officer Brand stared. You could almost see the two versions of the story colliding in his head. One version where he was the hero responding to a trespasser, and another version where he had just humiliated a kid who belonged. He swallowed. Then he said the line that should have been the end. "All right," he muttered. "Looks like you're good." Not an apology, not even a real acknowledgement. Just, "You're good." As if Darius had been on probation and passed the test. Paige's face twisted. "That's ridiculous," she said. "I still don't think—" Tasha cut her off. "You're done," she said. "Don't speak to my son again." Paige scoffed. "I was just protecting the community," she said. Protecting. Another elastic word. Sometimes it stretches to cover prejudice. The officer left, but the story didn't. Because the people filming didn't stop recording when the cruiser drove away. They recorded Paige walking back to her chair like nothing happened. They recorded Darius sitting on the edge of the pool, not swimming, just staring at the water like he'd forgotten what he came for. They recorded Tasha wrapping a towel around her son's shoulders, like she could cover the humiliation with fabric. That evening, one of the videos hit social media. Not with a dramatic caption, just with a simple line that made people's stomachs drop. "Teen gets stopped at his own gated pool because someone said he doesn't live there." Within hours, the comments poured in. Some were rage, some were sorrow, some were predictable denial. "We need more context. Police have to respond. Maybe he really didn't live there." But the footage was clean. The resident list screen, the wristband, the mother's license, the officer's question, "How do I know this is really your son?" That line, more than anything, lit the fuse. Because people heard what it really meant, and once enough people hear it, a gated community can't pretend it's just a misunderstanding. The next morning, Tasha opened her email. Subject line, "Community Pool Incident." The HOA board had sent a message. It was polished. It was careful. It talked about maintaining safety. It reminded residents of the rules. It thanked Paige, without naming her, for being vigilant. Tasha read that line twice. Vigilant, a compliment, for calling the police on a resident teen. Then she read the part that made her hands shake. The HOA warned that unauthorized guests could result in loss of pool privileges, and it said the board would be reviewing access procedures. Translation: instead of addressing what happened to Darius, they were tightening rules that would make it easier to challenge someone again. Tasha forwarded the email to herself. Then she started building a folder, screenshots, videos, witness names, timestamps, because she understood something now. Paige wasn't a one-time problem, and the officer wasn't the only issue. The HOA had chosen a side. 2 days later, Darius didn't want to leave the apartment. That's how it shows up. Not always as tears, not always as panic, sometimes as withdrawal. He sat on his bed, hoodie pulled up, phone face down. Tasha sat on the edge of the mattress. "You want to talk?" she asked. Darius shrugged. "What's the point?" he said. Tasha waited. He stared at the carpet. "I did everything right," he said finally. "I didn't say anything crazy. I didn't touch anybody. I had the wristband, I had the fob. I opened the gate the way I always do. And still, everyone looked at me like I was lying." Tasha felt her throat tighten. "That's not on you," she said. "It felt like it was," he replied. And that's the part people miss. The way a public accusation becomes a private wound. The way a teen starts editing himself, talking less, smiling less, trying to become invisible, because visibility suddenly feels dangerous. Tasha stood. "I'm not letting them teach you that," she said, and she meant it. She started with the HOA. She requested an emergency meeting. She asked for a written apology. She demanded that Paige be barred from the pool for harassment. She asked for policy changes. The board replied with the same syrupy language people use when they're trying to sound reasonable while doing nothing. "We understand emotions are high. We are reviewing procedures. We cannot comment on personnel matters. They refused to apologize. They refused to name Paige. They refused to acknowledge that a teen had been singled out. And then they made the second mistake. They issued Tasha a violation notice for disruptive behavior at the pool. Disruptive, because she'd spoken firmly, because she'd embarrassed them by refusing to be quiet. Tasha read the notice and laughed, one short, cold laugh, because she knew what that was. Retaliation. And retaliation is the kind of word lawyers love. If you've ever dealt with an HOA, you know how they operate. They speak in rules. They hide behind committees. They act like they're managing landscaping when they're really managing people. And when they feel threatened, they don't usually admit wrongdoing. They punish. Tasha wasn't just dealing with a neighbor anymore. She was dealing with a structure. So she did what smart people do when they realize they're fighting a system. She got help. She contacted a civil rights attorney. His name was Aaron Lynn. He wasn't flashy. He didn't promise miracles. He watched the pool video once, then he watched it again. And when it ended, he looked up and said, "This isn't just about the officer." Tasha frowned. "What do you mean?" "The HOA," he said. "They're part of this." He explained it in plain English. Housing discrimination laws don't just cover buying and renting. They cover how you're treated once you live there. Your access to amenities. Your right to enjoy your home. And when an HOA encourages harassment or retaliates against residents who complain about discrimination, it becomes a legal problem. A very expensive legal problem. Aaron tapped the violation notice. "This," he said, "is them putting it in writing." The demand letter went out a week later. It was polite, and it was deadly. It described the incident. It referenced the recordings. It demanded that the HOA issue a formal apology to Darius. It demanded that Paige be removed from any volunteer role and barred from making further complaints without evidence. It demanded that the HOA stop retaliating against Tasha. It demanded training for board members and pool staff, and it warned that if the HOA refused, the family would file suit. The HOA's response was defensive. They insisted they were committed to safety. They claimed Paige acted in good faith. They argued the officer's actions were outside the HOA's control, and they said the violation notice was standard procedure. Standard. Like discrimination can be routine. Aaron read the response and sighed. "Okay," he said. "They want to learn the hard way." When the lawsuit was filed, the neighborhood changed overnight. Not because people suddenly became kinder, because people became scared. Scared of headlines, scared of depositions, scared of what discovery would reveal, and scared of how much it could cost. Because once a lawsuit begins, it stops being about opinions. It becomes about evidence. The police body cam footage was requested, the dispatch call logs, the HOA emails, the violation history, the pool access records, and in that paper trail, patterns started to appear. Other residents quietly reached out. A black couple who said they'd been questioned about guest passes when their white neighbors weren't. A teenage girl who said a pool monitor asked her to prove she lived there while letting other kids walk past. A resident who said Paige had a reputation for keeping an eye on things. Keeping an eye. The phrase sounds harmless, until you realize what it means. It means policing, just without a badge. The turning point came in the form of an email chain, because cameras show you what happened, but emails show you what people were thinking. In discovery, Aaron received internal board messages. One board member wrote, "This is going to make us look racist." Another replied, "We can't say that." And then, from the HOA president, a line that made Aaron sit back in his chair. "We need to support residents who report suspicious activity. Otherwise, the wrong element moves in." Wrong element, not wrong behavior. Wrong element. A phrase that doesn't need to say race to carry it. Aaron sent that email to Tasha with one sentence. "This is the case." Tasha read it, and instead of feeling triumphant, she felt sick, because that email didn't create the harm. It just confirmed it. By the time mediation was scheduled, the HOA's insurance company had entered the chat. This is the part most people never see. HOAs are insured. And when an insurer smells a jury-friendly civil rights case, the math becomes brutal. How sympathetic is the plaintiff? How clean is the footage? How ugly are the internal emails? How likely is a jury to punish an HOA that seems more worried about image than a child's dignity? The insurer's lawyers watched the pool video. They watched Officer Brand question a mother's relationship to her own son. They watched Paige smirk. They read the board email about the wrong element, and they understood something immediately. A trial would be a disaster, not just financially, reputationally, because juries don't like seeing kids treated like suspects, and juries really don't like institutions that double down. Mediation happened in a bland office building that smelled like stale coffee and carpet shampoo. Tasha sat with Aaron. Darius sat beside her, quieter than he'd been before all this started. On the other side of the building, the HOA board sat with lawyers. Paige wasn't there, which, in its own way, was proof of what this had always been. The HOA was willing to let Paige pull the trigger, but they didn't want her face near the consequences. The mediator, an older man with a calm voice and tired eyes, shuttled between rooms. First offer, the HOA offered to clarify pool procedures and rescind the violation notice. No money, no apology. Aaron didn't even look up. Not serious, he said. The mediator returned an hour later. Second offer, $100,000. Aaron shook his head. They're not paying for inconvenience, he said. They're paying for harm. Tasha looked at Darius. He was staring at his hands. She wondered what it cost to repair a kid's sense of belonging. The mediator returned again. 300. 4. A pause. Then, finally, the number that ended the room's oxygen. $600,000. With additional terms. Policy changes, training, no retaliation. A letter acknowledging the family's right to access amenities. And confidential settlement language that tried, desperately, to keep it quiet. Tasha sat very still. This is where people imagine victims feel greedy. They don't. They feel tired. They feel like they've been carrying something heavy for too long. Aaron leaned toward her. You don't have to accept, he said. We can go to trial. Tasha looked at her son. Do you want to keep doing this? She asked softly. Darius hesitated. Then he said, I just want it to stop. That was the answer. Not revenge, relief. So Tasha nodded. We take it, she said. When the settlement hit the neighborhood, it moved like a silent earthquake. No one made a big announcement. The HOA didn't send an email saying, we messed up. They sent a bland notice about updated pool access protocols. They scheduled mandatory training for board members. They revised the complaint process. They posted new signage reminding residents not to call police unless there was an actual emergency. And in private, dues went up. Not because the pool needed repairs, because prejudice had become expensive. Paige stopped coming to the pool, or maybe she came and stayed quiet. Either way, her presence faded, but the memory didn't. Darius still walked differently for a while. He still checked faces, still wondered if someone was watching. That's the residue of being treated like you don't belong, even when you win. A few weeks after the settlement, Tasha drove Darius to the pool. Not for fun, for a test. The gate beeped. The green light blinked. Darius hesitated. Tasha didn't rush him, because healing doesn't happen on command. He took a breath and stepped through. The pool was the same smell, same glittering water, same kids. But something was different. This time, no one stood up to challenge him. No one demanded proof. No one lifted a phone like a weapon. Darius walked to the edge of the pool and dipped his toes in. He looked back at his mother. You think it'll stay like this? He asked. Tasha didn't lie. I think it'll stay like this if people keep getting consequences when they do the wrong thing, she said. Darius nodded. Then he jumped in. The splash was loud. And for the first time in weeks, Tasha felt something in her chest unclench. So what does this story actually show? It's not just about a rookie cop making a bad call. It's not even just about a neighbor making an accusation. It's about the ecosystem that makes those moments possible. A culture where "I don't recognize him" becomes "he doesn't belong." A culture where a phone call becomes a test of dignity. And a culture where institutions, HOAs, boards, committees would rather protect their image than protect the people paying their dues. Because think about it, if the resident list hadn't been pulled up, what would have happened? If the videos hadn't existed, what would the story have been? If Tasha had stayed quiet, how many more kids would have been challenged? How many more calls would Paige have made? That's why cases like this matter. Not because money magically fixes it. It doesn't. But money changes the cost. It takes what used to be free, humiliation, suspicion, exclusion, and forces someone else to pay. And when an HOA writes a $600,000 check, it sends a message that travels farther than any sign at a gate. It says, you can't keep pretending this is harmless. You can't keep hiding behind standards. You can't keep calling this safety. Because safety that only applies to some people isn't safety. It's control. Let me leave you with this. The next time you hear someone say, "I'm just being careful," ask yourself what they're really protecting. Are they protecting actual safety? Or are they protecting a picture in their head of who belongs? And the next time an officer gets a vague call about a suspicious person, ask what suspicion really means when the only crime is being unfamiliar. Because Darius didn't break a rule. He didn't hop a fence. He didn't sneak in. He walked through a gate he had every right to open. And still, he was challenged. Still, he was investigated. Still, he was forced to prove what should have been obvious, that he belonged. In the end, Hawthorne Cove paid out $600,000. Not because they were kind, because the evidence was loud, because the paper trail was ugly, because they were scared of what a jury would do if they saw a teenager put on display at a pool gate and heard an officer question whether a mother's son was really hers. And because sometimes the only thing that makes institutions change is the one language they can't argue with. A number, a check, a cost, a reminder that dignity isn't an amenity, it's a right. And no one should have to prove they live here just to swim, especially not a kid.